Okay, today we got some more configurator training. Today with this presentation, we're going to go through the large tank flange heaters and the small tank flange heaters, which is known as our LTFX, STFX. And with us today is Matt Deltondo. Matt, you there?
I'm here.
Great.
Thanks, Derek.
And he's going to walk us through it here. So go ahead, Matt.
All right. Yes, everyone. So as Derek mentioned, we'll be talking about the LTFX and the STFX immersion heaters. These products allow for removable heating elements, so that way we can efficiently heat the tank without ever having to drain it if service is required. We'll start off by logging on into our LTFX configurator. All right, as you can see from our drop-down menu, it's right here in the L's for LTFX.
The great thing about the LTFX, it's all one screen design, so it's pretty streamlined for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, and you are able to have all of the options on here just as much as the engineers may have. So this is a great tool for a salesman to have to be able to quickly configure an item for the customer, as well as get a price and accurate lead time for the products. So first thing we're going to do, we put in our initials here. One big thing that's pretty consistent across all the configurators is down on the bottom left-hand side down here, you'll notice if there's any violations or essentially any empty or open fields that need to be filled in. You can also kind of use this as a step-by-step tool to kind of help work your way through any of the configurators. So again, first off, we put in our initials. If we want to build a brand new product, we're going to select this product data. If we have an established part number and want to pull up that information, we can click on part number, enter our part number in here, and when that happens, this button will now be selectable, and you can go ahead and just pull up that information, and maybe that's something we'll do at the very end with the part number that we configured. But for right now, we'll go back over to product data, defaults to our LTFX style, and then we come over to our wattage box. Now, one thing that I would like to note, you kind of see the pop-up box here. The value must be between 999 and that's almost about 999,000. Now, big thing to key here is this is wattage and not kilowatts. So if you're going for a 25 kW heater, you want to make sure you put 25,000 in here. From next, we'll go over to our supply voltage.
That's a great point, Matt. A lot of our configurators, they bounce between kilowatts and wattage. So yes, the wattage. You want to make sure you're doing it in watts.
And if you happen to put just by chance, if you just happen to put 25 and forget the 25,000, you will get a pop-up notification to help remind you of that fact. Right, so real simple drop-down menu for voltage. Pretty much all voltages that you come across will be here. Of course, if something comes up out of standard, feel free to give the engineering group a call on it. But again, this is a great tool for quick, easy turnaround on quotes for your customers. Immersion length. Now this is the full length, including what we'll put in for our cold end. A really good general rule of thumb, if you can and you have the space, you want to try to get the immersion heater probably at least 60% of the diameter of the tank. That way you are efficiently heating a good portion of it, as well as help facilitate convection around the tank.
Good heat distribution. Yeah, good heat distribution with that.
So yeah, we'll just kind of put in here about 120 inches. That's about a 10-foot length. I would probably say that's relatively common for an immersion length for most tank heating applications. Cold length, this can vary. You want to check with the tank manufacturer, if you can, to figure out what their nozzle length may be on the connecting flange. So you'll notice that your cold length may be a little bit larger than, say, a typical flanged immersion heater or a screw plug. So I usually
would you say 12-inch would be a standard? Like you'd start with 12-inch and go larger for that?
Yeah, I usually kind of start with around the 9 to 12-inch, depending on maybe how large of a KW or large of a flange connection that we're working with. And it's just something to note that you may want to bring up with your customer just to help clarify some of the finer details. But I think 12 would be a good starting point for most applications.
Great.
Again, if your customer already has a tank size specified, this next drop-down menu will allow you to select that. One thing of note is based on the flange size that you select, it will determine how many of tubes you are allowed in that particular flange size and the number of those tubes, and whether they be a 2-inch or a 3-inch. So let's just say we'll select an 8-inch. Again, based
off
on
available space.
Correct. Based on the material that you're heating and the flange connection to the tank itself, you have your option of general steel, 304 or 316 stainless. Housings, we have two options. We know the tanks are going to be outdoors, so we start off with our E4 housing, but if it happens to be in a hazardous area, we have the option for our E2 housings. Now, next we get into the number of heating tubes available. Again, this is going to vary based on the flange connection size that you select. And if I can just get this to pop up, that will help.
Well, that's based on the available space, so your options are predetermined for you based on that flange size.
Correct. Let's see if I can trick this just by going up a flange size and see if it... There we go. So sometimes you may notice the configurator does need a minute to kind of think about some things, but we see when we changed over, right, it refreshed, and we have now a range of available options for the number of tubes and the size of tubes for the 10-inch flange. What you'll notice when you do select this, let's say we do 2 3-inch tubes, what you want to keep an eye on is down here towards the bottom part of the information is your design summary. Based on what you're heating, whether it be water, oil, or other various liquids, we want to be mindful of our tube watt density. And this is the watt density on the outer sheath of the tubes. So not necessarily the elements themselves, but this will be what is exposed to the product.
Not the open coil, but the actual tube sheet, what is in, like you said, the wetted part of the element.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Option 10 over here, we have our options to select our overtemp sensor. It defaults to type J. Type K is also acceptable. And then we also have an option for RTD if that is preferred by the customer. And then one of our last couple options here is a process temperature sensor. So ideally, and we would like to see a separate standalone sensor and thermal well on the other side of the tank from where the heater is located. That way it will ensure that the entire contents of the tank has reached temperature. However, we're not always that lucky to have a nozzle available for that. Space might be tight. The tank may already be fabricated. So with that, we do have an option for the process temperature sensor in a separate small thermal well. So again, you have your options of a type J or K thermocouple as well as an RTD. And if the tank is rather far from the where the control panel will be located, we do have an option for a sensor transmitter as well. So if we do get an error, right, you'll notice it pretty easy by the red warning line that comes up. And we just go ahead and click back onto that field and select the appropriate option. So once we see that all items are filled out, we get a green option here, or a green notification that our configuration is valid. We'll go ahead and click on the Lookup Part Number button. Since there is not a part established with this particular configuration, we'll go ahead and assign a new part number and save.
At this point, you have a description and a price there on the right, I see.
Yes. One click on the button over here with the magnification glass will bring up your text box, which has the description of the entire heater, everything that we configured, a working lead time, as well as a base list price. And in addition to it, we also have some information on the replaceable elements if your customer wanted to happen to store one or two of those in the event of future maintenance.
And from that box, you can actually copy and paste that into your quote, correct?
Correct. This is all copy and pastable information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this part number right now, and I'm going to show you the option of looking up the information from a part number. So if we, just kind of clear a lot of this information out here.
Click reset at the bottom right.
D.Eric, you are a very smart man. Thank you.
No problem.
So we'll go ahead and click on part number, and then we will...
Now, this is interesting to me. So this is real time now.
Yeah. So again, we just configured this. We see that we're missing some fields here. If you put your part number in there and hit enter, we see now, again, the lookup part number button is active.
And an anonymous participant has joined the conference.
And we see that all of the fields have been filled in. There is one small little trick. You don't necessarily get the description box to pop up, but a way to get that to happen is just click the change specs, look again, product data, look up part number, and because we configured it and it is an established part, everything is back up in the text output box.
Oh, okay. That is a neat trick.
All right. D.Eric, any other questions that you can think of that the guys may see a little bit more in the field or experience that you want to run past me before we head over to the STFX?
No, this one's pretty straightforward, but I think the STFX has a few things that we need to touch on when someone's learning using it.
Exactly. All right, perfect. So we'll head back to the home screen here. From our drop-down menu, we'll scroll down to the STFX configurator. And again, similar to the LTFX, the STFX is just essentially a smaller version of a flanged immersion heater with removable elements. Some key features about the STFX, though, we are kind of capped on a few things here with this configurator, more so than the LTFX. We'll start off by kW, or the kilowatts here. So again, I'm sorry.
Which is very different from the LTFX that was in wattage.
Yes. So again, exactly. The LTFX wattage. If we wanted 25 kW, it was 25,000 over there. With the STFX, it is just 25. But let's say you need something more than that, and you want a 30 kW heater. something to be mindful of this particular configurator is we actually have it maxed out at 25 kW. And it will revert back to 25 if you put a value in larger than that. Unless you're being mindful at the very end, it's not going to necessarily have a pop-up or a warning box, maybe like the LTFX did when we put in a value lower than its acceptable range. So another thing to note about the wattages, with the LTFX, you could get rather specific. Say we wanted 25.5 kW. That's an option that can be done in the LTFX. STFX, though, we kind of just round up to the nearest kW. So if I put in here 24.5 kW, we see that it will round up to the next nearest. And also round down if we put in 24.1. Again, just something to be mindful of when we are configuring this.
The whole number is up to 25 kW per heater, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and so similar from the LTFX, once we establish what our kW is going to be for the unit, we have drop-down menus for voltage. We have phase option here. Number of circuits is pretty much standard. I don't think that's going to give you too many options based on the different configurations, and it's pretty much just going to stick to default. Not a big problem or issue there. So one thing we'll see with the immersion length when we click on here, we do have it capped to 48-inch immersion length. Now, what we've kind of found, or some of the reasoning behind that, is when you tend to get over that length, it can be difficult to remove the elements and actually replace them in the field once they've kind of been heated up and cooled down and heated up and cooled down. So we try to keep this at a 48-inch length or smaller just for ease of maintenance and use in the field. Okay. This drop-down menu is taking a little bit of time as well, but we'll get there.
No, that's fine. And like you pointed out, a lot of the defaults on these configurators are just based on good engineering design. And even though the field's there and you may not be able to select it, it gets grayed out, and it's purposeful and it's for being there.
Another nice, interest of note here is this box here where we have recommended watt densities based on the application. And we'll see what the tube watt density is to match the application here once we kind of get some more of these selected. And I'm gonna hit refresh on this real quick, just maybe that'll get this going.
Sure.
Okay. Again, initials. We're going to start kW, voltage, phase, come on.
Maybe you have to select the flange size first.
Let's try that. So while that's thinking about the immersion lengths, we'll come over here and we'll select our different flange sizes. Now, something a little different with the STFX versus LTFX is your number of tube options is pretty much defaulted for you. So based on the flange size, those will automatically change. So something to be mindful of when configuring these and how to achieve the desired watt density.
Well, it goes to the max number of heating elements, but you can actually select less, correct? Or no, I guess not.
No, I don't believe so. I thought it, like I said, I think it's just defaults to a particular number based on the flange size.
Max number of elements, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, you've already illustrated the LTFX, which has similar selections. The lookup, the part number, and obviously the price and lead time and all that comes up exactly the same. And your watt density obviously is noted there. I'd say the only other thing to point out on this configurator that might be a little confusing would be the cold length. They're standard lengths. You can only choose between, I believe, 3 and 9.
Yes, I believe that's correct as well. My drop-down menus don't seem to be cooperating quite well. I'm going to refresh one more time, but the default cold length that is correct. It is both a 3 or 9-inch option. So again, if you have the ability to know that information from your customer or the tank vendor, go ahead and choose the appropriate size.
Okay. And we'll give more details in the instruction portion of this presentation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's good. That's a good illustration. I think that
okay.
Like I said, we'll reference the instruction sheets that'll go along with the presentation. And Matt, I really appreciate your time. I think that's good. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and again, if any of the guys have any questions, I would like to point out that the AE does have a hour that we dedicate, that we make sure our phone lines are open to anyone that may have any questions, whether it pertains to these configurators or any projects in general. Please feel free to reach out to us. It's every day, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We all try to make ourselves available to you guys, so please, any questions, feel free to give us a shot anytime.
Great. I didn't know that. That's excellent. Well, Matt, I appreciate it. Thank you.